I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. You build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at race 10 on Breeders' Cup Saturday. It is the Breeders' Cup Mile, this one going the 1 mile distance around the turf oval at Del Mar. Got 13 runners entered for this competitive edition of the mile. You definitely want to do a deep dive into the handicapping of a lot of these large fields on Breeders' Cup Saturday, and you could do so with Daily Racing Form PPs. Take advantage of one of these past performance packages. You can save $38 of the value of everything included: clock reports, betting strategies, the player's guide, and a whole lot more. Check out more information about our Breeders' Cup packages at shop.drf.com or by using that QR code on screen. Let's throw up the field of 13 that was entered for this Breeders' Cup Mile. Mike, I do think we're going to have a favorite in this race that is clearly defined in the number 2 Notable Speech, but this is a competitive affair where I wouldn't want to take too short a price on anybody.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that for sure. And listen, Notable Speech has, plenty going for him here for top connections. But it's not like he's, some kind of superstar European miler. He's really good, but he's not a superstar. And there are some progressive younger horses in this field who I think you want to really pay attention to.
Notable Speech, he was the beaten favorite in this last year, and he is coming off a grade 1 win at Woodbine. But Mike, he isn't a horse that has a whole lot of early speed. His late kick is his greatest weapon. And as I go through this field, we don't have a pace projector to reference, but just kind of taking stock of the running styles of a lot of the runners, I'm not exactly sure where the pace is going to come from. And that could be an issue not just for Notable Speech, but for plenty of others in this field too.
It could be a problem for a lot of different horses. You're right. I mean, you go through this field one by one, and obviously there are a lot of horses that it's really hard to decipher what their running style is. But it just feels like when you start picking apart these horses, there's nobody that's really going to be out there setting this race up for any of the closers. It'll be interesting to see what kind of trips these horses can pull.
Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with a big price, the number 1 Stripe. This horse was no match for Notable Speech when he made his his North American debut at Woodbine last time in that Woodbine Mile up in Canada. This is a horse who was a Group 1 winner in South Africa, Mike. I'm not really sure what kind of company he was keeping down there. Didn't look like he did a whole lot of running in the North American debut, and it's kind of hard to recommend off that effort.
Didn't like his Woodbine Mile, and he's just such a tough read otherwise. I mean, he did a lot of winning in South Africa, but he was also going off at short prices every week. I don't, sort of races he was supposed to win. And as you've pointed out, have no idea what he was beating over there.
The number 2 Notable Speech. When this horse is at his best, Mike, he probably is the one to beat in this race. And we saw him produce a really good effort back in his final start in Europe this season when he just missed in that Prix-Jacques Le Marois at Deauville, where he just failed to run down Diego Velasquez, but was held up a little bit in traffic with about 2 furlongs to go and was just flying across the wire. Was unlucky not to time that move correctly under William Buick. And then last time out, we'll take a look at his victory up in Canada when he won the Woodbine Mile. He did not get out of the gate well here, Mike, but he had an opportunity to get into good position in mid-pack. And if he's able to get similar positioning in this Breeders' Cup Mile and not have to pass 12 runners, maybe only have to pass 5 or 6, that's going to make Notable Speech much more dangerous, but it all depends on the break.
It does. That's true. And then we're seeing him, win this race, the Woodbine Mile, really easily. It was not a vintage running of that race. It wasn't a super strong field. He's just way better than those horses, and he won. I'm glad that you brought up his race 2 back though in France, because he was best that day. It was a good performance, and he didn't win. So you know that he has it in him, David. He's good, and I don't really have any knocks on him. Although I will say, as you put out, he was favored in this race last year, and he ran fine. But I don't know. I didn't see his excuse on that race. I thought he ran okay, and he got beat on the square.
I think it's a fair statement to make. He has lost some races that he was supposed to win, and I kind of wanted to see him be a little more visually impressive against that weaker field last time. The number 3, Salon, he is a 3-year-old stepping up against older here, but he was a Group 1 winner when he took down the Prix de Moulin de Longchamp last time in early September, beat a good field that day, Mike, but got held up early, produced a good kick through traffic to get the job done. It was a hard-fought win. Not really sure where the recent form has come from, because this horse Didn't look like anything special through the early spring, but maybe he's just really turned the corner in the second half of his 3-year-old season. And I will note, maybe the jockey switch back to Mikhail Barcelona has had a lot to do with his success, because he is a strong finishing jockey, and this horse responds to a strong finish.
That's a really good point. Yeah, for whatever reason, this horse has really upped his game in his last 2 starts. And you can see it. I feel like if you go back and look at some of those earlier races earlier this year in the spring, he seemed like a horse who didn't have everything really put together. It's particularly in that 2000 Guineas there, where he was beaten less than 5 lengths, finishing 9th, but he never looked comfortable in that race. He was way back in the pack. He was really running at the end there, though, but he just didn't feel like he was totally clued in. He's gotten progressively better since then. I thought he was really good winning the Group 3 2-back. They moved him up to take on older horses last time, good older horses. He was even better winning that race. I think this horse might be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, it looked like a horse that kind of got lost in a couple of those trips earlier in the year, and Barcelona in the last 2 races has just kind of lifted him over the line when he gets to the final furlong. We'll see if he can do it again here. The number 4, the Lion in Winter, he's familiar with Solani. Hit the wire with him 2-back in that Group 1 at Longshop in early September. Came right back since then, Mike, and was second in another Group 1, the Queen Elizabeth II at Ascot last time out. This is a horse who they thought of as an Epsom Derby type earlier in the season. He actually went off at 7-1 in that 1.5 mile, the classic race in England. Going longer just didn't work out for him. He's a very hot-headed horse. He gets really warm. When you watch him training in the morning at Delmar, he's all sweated up. That's just the way he is every time. But it feels like they've kept enough of a lid on him in the racing the last couple of times to get him to finally produce his results in the afternoon. And one thing I will note about him, Mike, is he's got way more tactical speed than a lot of the other Euros coming in for this race.
Yeah, that's true. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can hold it together here, though, and run as good, because it's going to be really important for him to do that. I thought he ran fine behind Salon 2 starts back. I mean, I didn't see a huge excuse for him in there, but he ran a good race. He was right there at the wire. So there's clearly not much between these 2 horses, second in another Group 1 last time, but that race is a little bit harder for me to get behind. I mean, he got beat by 1,000,000 to 1 shot in there. I'm not really thrilled with that loss, but I won't knock his recent form. It's pretty good.
I'm not going to be surprised when they just go to the lead with him, because his victory that got him to become the Epsom Derby favorite was in gate-to-wire fashion, that impressive Group 3 win during his 2-year-old season. We'll see if they go back to those tactics here. The number 5, Program Trading. Mike, this is a horse that was probably the best 3-year-old turf horse going back to 2023, and then didn't quite carry that form into 2024. He did earn a Group 1 victory in the Turf Classic. Then things kind of went off the rails in the Manhattan. He was off for a very long time, but he's come back with a couple of solid runner-up finishes, including in the Group 1 Turf Mile last time at Keeneland. Was never really getting to rhetorical that day, but it was a step in the right direction, and maybe he works out a pretty good trip from mid-pack here.
That's a possibility. 3rd off the layoff now, so maybe he's finally racing himself back into shape here for Chad Brown. Obviously, he had an issue out of that Manhattan that caused him to miss a lot of time, and so maybe he just needed a couple starts to shake the rust off. He's got the potential to fall into the right trip here, and his overall form is pretty good. I still question if he's up to winning a race like the Breeders' Cup Mile.
The number 6, Gran Oriente, he won a Win You're In race in Chile last time. That was all the way back in May. It was his first turf start in, I think, over a year. So, Mike, this is kind of a new thing for this horse, not only running in North America for the first time, but he'll be cutting back to a mile, having never faced competition like this. A lot of obstacles to overcome.
Yeah, it just seems like a horse who's destined to be a huge price in this race, and I think he's hard to make a case for.
You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. Morning Line is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is playing the ponies, elevated like a boss. Morning Line. Own the game.
The number 7, Johannes, came pretty close to winning the Breeders' Cup Mile last year when he just got run down by More Than Looks in the late stages. That was a really solid effort by him. He got a late start to his 2025 campaign, Mike. He had a setback earlier this year, was off for the first part of the season, and then when he came back at Saratoga in the 4-star Dave, it was just a nightmare trip right from the start. You can cross the line through that effort. We'll take a look at his most recent race when he got back on track, second off the layoff in the City of Hope Mile. But on his best day, this horse is good enough to hang with a field like this. Though I do think that this year's Breeders' Cup Mile is just a little bit more competitive than last year's was.
I feel the same way about it. It's the race we're watching now on the screen. It's nice to see him sort of get back on track off of that really tough trip at Saratoga off the layoff. He's, handling the Southern California turf milers there in that City of Hope. He's better than those horses. I already knew that. So he just doing what he's supposed to do in that race. And that's what you get from Johannes. He's a really consistent horse. He can get good trips in his races. He will show up and give a good account of himself on Saturday. I do believe that he'll do that. But like you, I think this race is tougher than the one that he ran in last year. It's not like he's going to be some kind of great price in this race.
Johannes is maybe the premier SoCal participant in this race, but the number 8 Formidable Man is not far behind him, and he really loves Del Mar. He is 6 for 6 over this Del Mar turf course. And Mike, I could see that fact just attracting some support in his direction in this Breeders' Cup Mile. That's why I made him as low as 10 to 1 on the morning line. He's very good at this distance, but I will make the point, Mike, he was a horse that had a lot of early speed in the early part of his career, and they've sort of changed around his running style over the past year where they hold him up and make a run through the stretch like they did last time in the Del Mar Mile. We could take a look at the replay of that race, and he's very good when he uses this style, but I wonder if that could backfire on him if they try to do that in a race that might be a paceless affair like this one.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because I was thinking the same thing when I was looking at him the other night. Like, he's a horse who, when you start going through this field, you see there's no pace in here. You wonder if they're going to go back to, maybe getting a little more aggressive with this horse, but it just doesn't seem like they want to ride him that way anymore. We'll see what happens. I like this horse. I know he lacks figure power. He doesn't have that really fast race. I'm not sure how much that matters, David. This horse shows up, he runs every single time, and he wants to win.
Yeah, I guess the difference between Johannes and him is Johannes proved it in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year, and he's beaten those lesser California-based turf horses and really nothing else recently. The number 9, Aragona, is a runner from Japan. She is a 5-year-old mare facing the males here. She primarily faced her own sex in Japan, tried males a couple of times at lower levels than this. She just missed in the Group 1 Victoria Mile going back to the spring of this season. Only one race since then. She got the job done in a very close finish. Watching her races, Mike, she's run okay. She doesn't make me think that she's some superstar that could necessarily win at this level. But I will say her form is not dissimilar to a mare named 10 Happy Rose, who came in and was close 4th in the Breeders' Cup Mile for Japan last year.
Yeah, we'll see what this one can do. I guess she'll be some kind of a big price. I mean, if you wanted to sort of go by the Victoria Mile where she's sort of in the photo there, I mean, that was just a blanket finish, a race that totally fell apart. There was a huge pace in that race, and all the closers came at the same time, and she was one of them. She had every chance to win there in a race that fell apart, and she couldn't do it.
The number 10, Jonquil, he's a horse who did come to the U.S. early to get a prep in that turf mile at Keeneland. And like, it was not an ideal trip for this horse. I mean, it's typical to see the Europeans not be quick out of the gate and be left with a lot to do. But not only that, he didn't get to save any ground around the turns. And it arguably was one of the best races he's produced because he is a horse that seemed like he was a little up and down in Europe, but might have been coming to the U.S. on a high.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I think of the horses exiting that turf mile at Keeneland last time, this is the horse that I sort of wanted out of that race. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he's got the upside. He did not get a good trip in that race. And I also just going through all of his races over in Europe earlier through the spring and into the summer, he's a miler, man. I know they tried sprinting him a couple times. They tried a few different things. This horse is a turf miler, and he ran an underrated race last time.
The number 11, Rhetorical, is the winner of the Keeneland Turf Mile that a few of these have been exiting. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. And Mike, I thought he ran really well because not only was he stepping way up in class after having beaten really, nothing more than New York breds in most of his prior starts, but also this was a pretty honestly paced race. And he was in closest attendance to the pace. It started to come apart at the end. He takes over at the 8th pole. And personally, when I watch this race and see them coming onto the wire, it doesn't feel like they are ever catching this horse. He gallops out strongly past the finish line. It's not like he's falling apart at the end of this race. He is just really, really good. Yeah. And while he's drawn outside, he's got the tactical speed to get over from that post, provided a clean start. And he's one who could set a pretty good trip up close to the pace in this race.
Yeah, that's really important. Just his tactical speed is really going to come into play here, even from post 11. Listen, it's just getting harder and harder to take stands against this horse because every time they move him up in class, he delivers, and he delivered in a big way last time. Personally, I thought he got a perfect trip in that race. But as you pointed out, they were not catching him at the end. This horse was awful good last time.
The number 12 Gatsby Up, he's going to be a big price in this race. He was no match for Notable Speech last time, and that Woodbine Mile that we already mentioned was not the strongest edition of that race. And Mike, he's kind of hard to get excited about based on any of his prior races.
Yeah, I mean, when he won the King Edward two-back, he just had this huge contested pace to come running at, and he sort of closed it down there and took advantage a little bit, sort of ran to a similar level last time, and it wasn't close to good enough.
Mike, I'm really not sure what we're supposed to do with the number 13 Curat, because we've been having this conversation about how there's not a whole lot of pace in this race. Well, this horse did win a race as the pace setter, and it was a Group 1 race against some really nice milers in Europe. That was in the Sussex going all the way back to the end of July, where he and another pacemaker sort of took turns trading the lead. They ended up dueling themselves into an 8-length margin on the rest of the field, and everybody else got so far back that he was able to hold on at the end. It was sort of a surprising win at 150-1. Since then, he's kind of proven that he's not really a Group 1 level horse, but maybe from the outside post, they just try to send him to the front, and that could make him dangerous.
I guess it could. I mean, I guess if they have designs on the lead, though, from out there, they're going to have to really send this horse if they want to clear to make the lead, even if nobody else is really going that hard. And I just feels like that would have to take its toll on a horse who, as far as I can tell, it's got one race that's going to give him a chance in here. Yeah. And, as you point out, he paid $300 that day.
Well, everybody, before we get to our top picks for this race, I want to let you know about a little secret. Morning Line is a private SEC-regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interests in racing's biggest stars like Torpedo Anna and Blackout Time, who'll be running in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Be part of championship bloodlines. Visit morningline.io. Buy, sell, trade, own the game. Let's go to our picks for this Breeders' Cup Mile. And Mike, I struggled with making picks in this race because I'm really not sure how the trips are going to work out for a lot of horses. I kind of decided I was a little bit against Notable Speech. I considered several of the Euros. I think that Rhetorical is very dangerous, but I think I kind of missed the opportunity to get a price on him last time. And I think the Lion in Winter might be a horse that trips out among the Euros here because he's got that tactical speed and he's got the form that makes him dangerous in this spot.
Can't argue with any of that. I found myself, of the Europeans, I found myself really preferring the 3 Salon, who I do have on top. I just like the form he's coming into this race in, and I really like his last 2 races. I think maybe he's hitting this race at the right time. I also like John Cool. I put him third. I do have Notable Speech in there. I'm not sure why I have him second. I know that he can win here, but I don't want to bet this horse in this race, especially if he's the favorite. I got him in there. I know he can win. I'll have no money on that horse. I prefer the 3, and I want to use a lot of that 10.
3, 2, 10, 7 for Mike, and 4, 11, 3, 2 for me in a race 10 on Breeders' Cup Saturday, the mile. Good luck if you're playing the races this Breeders' Cup weekend.